Call the Colleyville City Council work session to order at 5:30 for June the 18th, 2019. And we call the roll. Councilmember Nakamura is not here. Her flight was delayed. She's supposed to arrive at 6:45 at the airport. Hopes to be here by 7:30, so we will see. Mayor Pro Tem Mahmood.
Here.
Sorry.
That's just supposed to be here on time.
Councilmember Wheat.
Here.
Mayor's here. Councilmember Dodson.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly will not be here tonight. He's out of town.
He's watching us online.
He's watching online. Check. Councilmember Rigby.
Here.
Okay. So we have three items. The first one is health insurance, so we'll start right on.
Check.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jesse Perez, Human Resources Director. Today's presentation will be over the health insurance renewal. Every year around this time, May or June, we evaluate our insurance benefits that we offer to city employees. This includes our medical insurance, our dental, vision, life insurance, as well as our flexible spending account plans and employee assistance program. So for this year, the lines of coverage that were up for renewal were our medical and dental insurance. So we did a request for proposal in April, and I have here today Andrew Weger from Hub, the city's insurance broker, to present the results of that bid process that we just went through, as well as provide recommendations to you. So with that, I will turn things over to Andrew.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Andrew Weger. I'm an employee benefits specialist at Hub International Benefits, formerly IPS Advisors. I want to thank you all for the time this evening to meet with you all to discuss the 2019-2020 benefit recommendations. And through this presentation, I'll do an overview of the RFP, walk through the financials and why we did a request for proposal process, and then finally discuss our recommendations. At the end of the presentation, I'll leave some time for questions, but if there are any questions during the presentation, please feel free to stop me. I'd be more than happy to answer those for you. So on this slide, what we're looking at is an overview of the RFP. Like Jesse alluded to, we did release an RFP on medical and pharmacy insurance through Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas, who's been the in-force vendor for quite some time now with the city, and also dental insurance through Cigna. You might be asking why we did an RFP this year. We did an RFP actually last year, and a lot of that was due to the budget increase, which we were looking at in March of this year. And the next tab really kind of paints a better picture for us to understand, the reasoning for that. But this slide, what we look at is plan performance, and that's the most important thing that the vendors are going to look at when we do an RFP. What I show here in the top row is your date, your medical subscribers, so those are your employees enrolled on the plan, your medical claims, your pharmacy claims, total costs, so medical plus your RX, and then your premium. The premium is what the city and the employees are paying for medical insurance, and then the loss ratio. And the loss ratio is taking your total cost divided by your premium, which gives you that loss ratio number. And a target loss ratio number under Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas is going to be right around 85%. So anything that's at or above 85% is going to warrant an increase from Blue Cross Blue Shield in the market. So looking at last plan year in the middle of the page, that middle row, the city ended about an 82.7% loss ratio for the year, so slightly below, but the city did incur a slight increase last year, around 7% to premiums, due to the loss ratio at the time of renewal. This year, though, what you will see at the beginning of the plan year, the loss ratio was kind of on the upward tick. When we got through December, the loss ratio for that month was at 147.4%. That did raise some eyebrows on our end, and what we did in March is we presented a budget projection. At that time, when we met with the management team, we were projecting right around a 16% increase to your premiums without any benefit design changes. What you will see the last few months, though, February, March, and April, things have improved, which is good news going into a renewal. If the experience continued on, I would expect a large increase this year. But knowing that the plan has improved, that did help with our negotiations during the RFP process. This year, though, at the bottom right hand of the page, you'll see the loss ratio is at 88.1%. So going into the RFP process, we were expecting some sort of renewal. Like I said, we were budgeting right around a 16% renewal increase this year. So what I'm showing here on this next slide is the medical benefits that are being offered to the employee workforce today, the full-time employees. So,
Question.
yes, sir.
Back a slide.
Yes, sir.
So when we go through this process, it's not at the end of the year. So we had a loss ratio that was projecting higher.
Yes, sir.
So we, what, a 7% increase last year?
7% increase last year.
And
correct.
so, but our loss ratio came in under.
Mhm.
So in the end, they did better.
They did, that's
So we're
correct.
kind of in a similar situation. We're projecting higher. But anyway, last year, they came out okay.
They did,
Yeah.
they did. They came in a little bit better than what we.
Does that get factored in?
That does. We certainly do look at that. And that is what I use in my negotiation power, saying, hey, look, last year, we did come in a lot better than we expected. But, really from, June through December, the last few months, just seeing that trend upwards again. They're going to be looking really at the last 12 months worth of experience. And when we were out here last in March, the loss ratio was about 104%. So Blue Cross Blue Shield at that time was actually losing money on the city of Colleyville.
Yeah.
But we did factor that in, that, plan performance did improve at the end of last year. But again, they're going to be really looking at the last few months of this plan. They're saying, hey, we noticed that the loss ratio is upticking again. We need to be conservative with our projections. And so with that being said, they did actually come in right at our projections this year at a 16% before negotiations. And I'll talk about those numbers of how
16% is way up there.
it is very high. So
What's
what
typical anymore?
in the mark,
Now, let me ask another
Yes.
question. So if, at the time we negotiated, it was 82, what would you have expected the premiums to be?
What was your early estimate last year?
Yeah.
Wasn't it the same?
Well, no, I'm asking
15%.
a different question. I'm asking if you knew we were gonna have 82, we had 82%, they knew it at the time you were doing this, what would you have expected the premiums to do?
close to 7%, most
Yeah.
likely. No, most likely going to be around a 7% increase because we had to factor in medical trend every year. So
Okay.
medical trend's about 7% on an annual basis. Pharmacy trend's closer to 11% on an annual basis. So we're expecting an
Annual cost increase.
annual cost
So at
increase.
85%, you're saying you still expect 7%.
Around a 7%, that is correct, because they do have to make their profits being a fully insured contract. If you were self-insured and you were paying out claims,
Yeah.
you would save some money from that
Yeah.
perspective, but being at your size of
Yeah.
165 employees, one claim, it can really
Okay.
be accounted for.
I thought prescription premiums were going to go down. I thought on my insurance, they actually gave us a discount because that went down significantly this year. I think under Trump's new plan, so I don't know how Blue Cross Blue Shield does theirs, but it looks like they're still up. I noticed the trend in ours is 15% every year. We have to negotiate that 15%. It seems like no matter how well we do.
Yeah.
Our workman's comp gives us rebates back for that,
Yeah.
but through Texas Mutual, we get huge rebates, but it seems like the insurance industry is just, anyways.
Yeah.
I'm on my soapbox on this one, 'cause I just redid mine too.
Okay. Well, what I look at here on this slide, page 7, is just an outline of the benefits that are being offered to employees. And we have not made any significant changes in quite some time. The one significant change that we have made is implementing the HRA plan back into the plan last year. That's a health reimbursement account where the city reimburses $1,250 for employee-only coverage, $2,500 for family coverage. So making these plans a little bit richer compared to the market standards today. Because what we do every year is we do a market study of benchmarking, looking at sister cities of yours to see how benefits line up to them. With those HRAs, it does put you back in line. But these are not health savings account plans. So you might have heard of high deductible health plans before where it's all deductible coinsurance. Those aren't in place today. These are PPO plans, so these have copays associated with these plans, which is nice for the employees. So when they do go to the doctor, they do know what they're paying unless they're going inpatient or outpatient. That can be a little bit different. But they do have set copays for the pharmacy as well. So
One question
Yes,
on
sir.
the pharmacy. Do the employees know about GoodRx?
So I'm not sure if we've promoted
I hope they
GoodRx.
do,
Mhm.
because I don't have many prescriptions myself, but I find that some prescriptions I can get for way less than a copay.
Right, yes,
They need to know that.
so we have a program through Hub International called One RX. It is essentially the same thing as GoodRx, where employees can go and get coupons, discounts, going through a pharmacy and looking up a generic prescription, there may be one that instead of $20, it may be $10. But
Or
if,
5 or whatever.
right, but what we find sometimes is those, if you're not billing that through the insurance, that's not gonna be applied to the out-of-pocket maximum then. So they're essentially paying for that out-of-pocket. It is less, but those costs aren't applying to the out-of-pocket maximum if it's not filed through the insurance. So,
I understand, but money is money, you know?
oh, of course,
Yeah.
of course.
I just think it would be a good idea to publicize it if people aren't aware.
Well, what we have here is the financial results of the RP process. So what I'm showing here on the very left-hand side is the financial in the green. It goes employee only, employee plus spouse, children, and family. Going to the right, it breaks out by the enrollment. So you'll see how many employees are enrolled in each plan. And then columns 1 and 2, we're showing Blue Cross Blue Shield current rates for the base, the buy-up plan. So what total premium right now is of May 1st of 2019. The total premium is about $2.2 million from a total premium standpoint. Looking at Blue Cross Blue Shield's original offer through the RP process, they presented a 16.7% renewal increase. That's about a $370,000 increase to rates. Through the RFP, though, through our negotiations and looking at the other quotes in the market, we were actually able to drill that down to a 6% increase. So that is actually below market trend today. Like I said, we were anticipating some sort of increase, but we do feel a 6% increase is very competitive, given that the plan is running at an 88% loss ratio right now. One thing I would mention, we actually got the most recent numbers in for your claims risk premium this morning. And for May, the loss ratio actually was up in the 100% range. So we actually were able to lock in these rates before knowing that this bad month was coming in. One thing I will mention, though, during this RFP, we look at Cigna's offer. They came in at a rate pass. And we found this to be a really competitive offer on the table. However, the issue that you run into with these type of offers is if they do come in at a rate pass and an increase is warranted, what's going to happen year 2 with
What does that rate pass mean?
no changes to rates at all. So essentially everything's going to be as is, benefits and the rates. However, we look at longevity in the market. If you do move vendors, for example, to Cigna and how you're running currently year to date, because next year you're going to have so much immature data on file, they may be passing a double-digit increase onto the city at that time. So,
I got a question about that. So they're already saying medical loss ratio rate cap for 2020 and 2021 plan year. What is that?
so they broke it out based off of your loss ratio. So they said if you run between a 80 to 90% loss ratio, we're going to cap you at this amount. And what we found is looking at that cap, if you were running at the cap this year, for example, of where you're at, the renewal actually would have came in much higher. It would have been a double-digit increase.
Aren't these one-year plans anyways?
These are one-year plans. That's
So
correct.
why wouldn't it be cohesive for us to go with, and save $133,000 with Cigna, and then let them bid us out again? That's what we're doing every year anyways.
So the issue that you run into is Blue Cross Blue Shield may not quote on you next year. That's what we have found in the past with some of our vendors. If you are presenting a very competitive renewal, like Blue Cross Blue Shield has the last few years, Blue may fail to or decline to quote. In addition to that, I just worry about the
I would disagree with you on a $2 million insurance policy, but anyways, go ahead.
Okay, it's just, I'll mention from the longevity standpoint, Blue Cross Blue Shield every year has come out very competitive on the renewals, averaging 6 to 7% in this process.
Is that 6% already negotiated, or is that still a negotiation?
This is firm and final with their numbers today.
Did they know about Cigna's proposal? By chance, what they were offering?
Originally, what they were
Yeah,
offering?
when they presented the 6%?
When you did the negotiation,
Oh,
did they know?
yes. So I went back to the drawing board with them and let them know where Blue Cross Blue Shield came in at.
Well, I mean,
No,
does Blue Cross Blue Shield know where Cigna's?
Oh yes, of course. That's the reason why we were able to
Drop it to
drop
6%.
that offer to 6, of course.
Okay.
So what I've seen in the past is carriers buying up business, and I've seen this a lot in the last few years. And there's a perfect example. I have a city in Houston right now, same type of situation that you're in currently. They've been with actually TML for the last 10 years. We had a quote on the table just like this where someone came in at rate pass the next year. They were looking at a 30% increase to premiums running at a 95% loss ratio. It doesn't mean this will happen to the city of Colleyville, of course, but these are the type of things that I see on an annual basis. That is not how the norms to see a vendor lowball their quote to get in the door.
And I just think that Cigna's really reputable, and, you know, usually low ballers come in, they're Joe Blow insurance company, but I was just curious of why, you know,
Understand.
it would be.
Do they always do 1-year policy renewals?
On a fully insured, it is, yes, it's 1 year. There have been other groups of ours, fully insured, that have received 2-year rate guarantees, but they are very unheard of. City of Keller, for example, got a 2-year rate guarantee at one time, but there's a lot of risk by
Okay.
taking that approach.
This is pretty standard.
This is pretty
Every-
standard,
okay, got it.
yes, correct, at a 1-year guarantee. We are seeing rate caps now be put in place based off the loss ratio experience. But like I said, when we did the analysis and looking at what the cap would be this year under your loss ratio, it actually wasn't favorable.
Well, and it sounds like 6%, I mean, 6% is still lower than 7%, which is what you were kind of,
Well, originally, we were
Well.
anticipating a 16% increase, so this is well below our target of what we were anticipating
but a
this year.
baseline, 7%.
Correct. So one thing I'd mention here is under the Blue Cross Blue Shield quote, there is a 1% dental bundling discount. The vendors today, if they do like packaging the benefits together to streamline the process, it's much easier for them and for the city as well. So they were at a 7% Blue Cross Blue Shield, but what they did is because we packaged that together, they took off another $24,000 or 1% off their medical premiums just to include that all together. So UHC does this, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, they're all in this space of bundling benefits together. So any other questions I can answer on this piece for you all? What we have next is the dental RFP recommendations for you all. So what I show here is the Cigna DPO plan in the white. Cigna is the incumbent today. To the right is their renewal offer. They came in close to a 5% increase to rates. And then Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas. And what you'll see is Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas, actually presented a 16% increase to rates. However, they provided a $20,000 premium credit that will offset that increase on that first month's premium. So, like I said, by bundling the medical and the dental policies together, we are seeing about a wash on the dental piece, but we are seeing that $24,000.
If it's a 1-year credit.
That's a 1-year credit, that's correct. So what we would most likely do next year again is look at this again and try and negotiate another credit, of course, of $20,000 as a possibility. We would probably look at another RFP process again next year to see if we could negotiate those down more in line. Now, I will say the dental premium or the dental loss ratio at this time is over 100%. So when we went out to bid, the market did come in closer to 10 to 15% from the market. So we were anticipating some sort of increase this year on the dental premiums based off the experience. So our recommendation at this time would be to move to Blue Cross Blue Shield Dental to streamline that process and the bundle benefits together.
You know, the interesting thing that's happened to dental insurance is that basically it is no insurance.
It's not.
The maximum is $1,500.
That's right.
And you end up paying, what, $60, $70 a month.
Mm-hmm.
It is almost to the point of no insurance.
It's like vision now.
Yeah.
I know.
Get half. And then I'm saying it's like you're already paying for half of it, and then you're gonna pay over the top of that cap.
I know.
So you're only getting a $700 break out of all that
Exactly.
you're putting in.
The whole thing. And if you don't use it, of course, then it's sunk cost.
Right. So what you see typically is, there are a lot of families on the plan, for example, and a lot of them are using it for the orthodontia for the children. Of course,
Sure.
there's a $1,500 maximum for the orthodontia, but that's a lifetime maximum. So vendors do track that vendor to vendor, so.
We do.
A printout of
Oh,
this?
they do.
I know, I apologize.
It's in
I
here.
was like, I can't, it is?
It's in our packet.
Oh.
It's terrible.
Sorry, there's a lot of benefits to be presenting, so I apologize.
The dental's been terrible for years.
Yeah.
It's not, this is nothing
Okay,
new.
I didn't
So
see
what
that.
happens if, you're recommending Blue Cross Blue Shield, but if for some reason we just were like, no, we wanna do Cigna, what happens to our rate? Because it was a bundled discount.
You would see that $24,000 be applied back into the Blue Cross Blue Shield offer
Okay.
on the medical side.
It'll be 7%.
So-
7%.
The recommendation is accept the package rate because we've got all these discounts built in.
Right.
Okay.
And I would mention too that the city has been contracted with Blue Cross Blue Shield Dental in the past, and so we did a referral check on this to make sure, employees were happy. We actually talked with the employee insurance committee as well, and they seemed very receptive of moving back to Blue Cross Blue Shield, even though they are very happy with the Cigna dental benefits today.
Question, can you apply an HSA type process to just dental?
So it would have to be under the medical plan, the HSA account. So you'd have to implement an HSA account on the medical benefits.
Because I could see where at some point you go to that package benefit and just get rid of dental insurance.
You could do that, essentially, yeah, and so offer the HSA plan as a third medical plan design, and then employees could use those pre-tax funds for dental, exactly.
Yeah,
It just doesn't do anything anymore.
it's just not very good.
Should we explore that next year?
It's not a bad,
mean,
I think it's probably a
worth
good idea.
considering, but-
Yeah.
And with an HSA, they
Just
can
look
roll it over. I mean, you'd obviously make it
Sure.
less than the
Yeah.
premium, so.
Or use it for medical if that's where they're heavier,
Right,
heavier
either way.
spenders, yeah.
Because it's either way. It's kind of like what they do right now with their unreimbursed medical.
Right.
Flexible spending, I would call it unreimbursed medical. Flex spending, same thing, it's pre-tax money that's set aside from the employee to be used for any medical or dental.
Any other questions I can answer on this piece? Okay. So what I have here next is just a write-up of our recommendations. Renewing with Blue Cross Blue Shield with the essentially the 6% increase with the packaged discount. One thing I did not note before is Blue Cross Blue Shield did include a $10,000 wellness credit. So the city is contracted through Scott and White today on their wellness program. So the city uses those funds from Blue Cross Blue Shield to fund the wellness program. So that is included on
What
it.
does that incorporate? What is it? I don't know what a wellness.
Well, I don't know if you want to speak a little
Yes,
bit
so
to
the
that.
wellness program is, it's a robust employee program for employees and for spouses as well. You don't have to be on the medical plan to participate, so we use that credit to offset the cost of the wellness program, and that provides us with programming on site where we have a nutritionist or a wellness program manager from Baylor Scott White program to come out and provide learning opportunities for employees to take back to their homes and kind of practice these habits and to build into a more healthier workplace, promoting that. They help us with activities to kind of build camaraderie around other employees by sponsoring departmental challenges to get everybody involved. And this has really gotten some of our internal departments really involved and excited. We do online challenges where you kind of log in your activities, and the motivation obviously is you get to do this with your spouse or another coworker, but you also get an opportunity to be entered into some raffle drawings at the end of that month. And so our wellness program manager has an activity planned every month, and she actually goes on site to locations throughout the city, so employees she's kind of like an extension of our employee workforce. Everyone kind of seems to know her now because she's out there on the front lines. And we've seen a significant increase in participation over the last 6 months, only because she's out here promoting the program. So we're seeing some real benefit there.
Great.
Good.
Next tab, what I'm showing here is just our recommendation for the dental insurance with the $20,000 credit that would be applied and the bundling discount. We did have another policy up for renewal, the employer-paid basic life and disability insurance that the city provides. We did not release an RFP this year due to a reduction in cost, which we were able to negotiate in 4% decrease with around a $1,600 reduction to employer-sponsored benefit plans. So these rates would be guaranteed for 2 years. So most likely in the 2-year time frame, we'll analyze that renewal again and determine if an RFP is warranted at that time. And then lastly, what we show is the other lines of coverage that are being offered to employees today. Superior Vision, the vision policy was in a rate guarantee. The Employee Assistance Program had no change to those rates. The flexible spending account, like we discussed, was in a rate guarantee. And then the COBRA and HRA, Health Reimbursement Account Administration, was also in a guarantee. So because these were all in rate guarantees at this time, we did not recommend to go out to bid for any of these lines, and these will be renewing in the upcoming years. So these stayed in place, so the only change we're really recommending this year is to move to Blue Cross Blue Shield Dental, but everything else would be staying the same for employees with no benefit changes. And that is all I have. Are there any questions that I could answer for you?
I think, the loss ratio is based on money values, correct?
Yes, well, it's,
Okay,
yes.
So, I kind of like George, I think that we need to just suggest maybe using the, that's gonna help drive that number down.
Sure.
Maybe have a little more challenges amongst departments to where, see who has the smallest losses. Anyways, I'm just thinking outside the box of how we can do that to get those loss ratios down. So, okay, that's what I need to do.
Anything that's an opportunity to find a better rate. I know that my wife and I have had to have a couple of MRIs and found out that it's far cheaper to go to these outlying
All guys.
small guys than go to the hospital. In fact, my wife had a in-hospital pretty minor procedure, and I had a major MRI. And my deductible was less on the MRI because it was this outpatient.
Yeah, it's really interesting on that, is what the doctor, I went to a doctor that would always send to those cheaper places, and they were just fine.
Yeah, right.
It's up to the doctor.
It
You gotta
depends,
ask.
and so what we do is we ask.
Yeah,
Can
you
we
gotta
go
ask.
someplace else?
Yeah. And all
and,
those scans just makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Well, the GoodRx makes a huge difference on some of the drugs that are name brand,
Yeah.
expensive, and the generic alternative can be substantially different, $200 versus $20.
Oh, yeah.
So
What
it's
is the
not
good-
just.
Yeah,
What
we
is the
had
Good
a-
RX? I'm not familiar with that.
It's an online, it's an app. It's an
Okay.
app, and
It
so.
brought you to generic or something?
Well, you put in
No,
your medication, it'll tell
any-
you where the pharmacies
any
around and
medication.
their prices,
Doesn't
based on
have
your
to be-
insurance or without.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't have to
Price
be
check.
generic.
No, all.
My wife had to have a short time
Yeah.
thing that was gonna be
Yeah.
a huge amount. And we got it for less than a third. I mean, it was major,
Big, okay. So
hundreds of dollars.
this is outside the insurance.
Exactly.
Yes, it's
And I
independent.
will add that, and I apologize for not bringing it up earlier, but we do have a service, a concierge service provided to our employees through Compass.
Yeah.
It serves in that capacity where if you're doing some price shopping for
Yeah.
health insurance services, like for an MRI or even prescriptions, those representatives at Compass can actually find a procedure that might be cheaper elsewhere, and it could be even closer to where you are. It's a service that's provided to employees, excuse me, and their dependents on the insurance plan for medical dental
Do
vision.
people use that?
We promote it heavily.
Yeah, okay, good.
And we also, when someone is eligible for benefits, we subscribe them with their email address.
Yeah, okay.
And so when Compass sends out important notifications, employees receive that notification as well.
Do you get usage information from them? Not like individuals, like so-and-so called in and asked for information, but more like, hey, you had 30 phone calls from Colleyville this year, or, do you get usage information like that?
They do provide
Yeah, there's
a summary report for us.
Just out of curiosity to get an idea if people are making use of, maybe they know about it or not, I don't know, but.
And actually Colleyville has one of the, probably the highest utilization rates I've seen compared to my other cities that are utilizing that program today. So
That's great.
a lot of education during open
Jesse's
enrollment.
doing his job, is what
He's
you're
doing a
saying.
great job. Right, so.
Yeah, there's
That's great.
there's one thing you have to watch on GoodRx, is if you ask the prescription or
Yeah.
the pharmacy to check it, sometimes their price is higher than you get. So what you want to do is look it up before you go. You show them
Oh, okay.
the number,
Okay.
and then that's what you get. So you learn it after you've used it a few times. I'm sure you
I
did
had
the
some
same thing.
experience,
It's a
absolutely.
big deal.
Okay, very Very good.
Good, thank
Any other
you.
questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
The next item is preliminary budget projections. George, I'm sure you read all this, right?
Marked it up.
We can go like that.
Let's do it, Mark.
Okay. Good evening, Marion City Council. Tonight, we're going to talk about the fiscal year 2020 preliminary projections. So that's next fiscal year. This is really our first time together to talk about these numbers. And so last work session, I was going to talk about the budget process and all the steps that we've gone through and all that, but you've all been through that. So
We
don't
know
need to
what
do
it
that.
is.
So I'm not going to do that tonight. We're going to get straight to the numbers.
There you go.
So, tonight we're going to talk about history of efforts, just a brief summary slide about the last 3 or 4 years in terms of what the city council has done, made priorities, and how we've kind of been able to operate efficiently. We're going to go right into the operating fund preliminary projections. I want to underline preliminary. This is our proposed budget. This is preliminary projections. The department heads have done a lot of work. The city manager's office has done a lot of work on these numbers, and you have the line item detail in your packet that you can go through and we can talk about if there's things you would like to talk about. But these are preliminary numbers. As we move further into the summer and we have discussions with the city council and staff, we'll kind of tighten up the revenue projections and some of the expenditures as well as we move to a proposed budget later this summer. Also, we have one slide at the end for the agency agreement funding. You had the nonprofit agencies present to you a few months ago. They've requested funding. We've got a slide to discuss that and kind of talk about direction the city council wants to move with those agencies. So briefly, history of efforts. We go back to fiscal year 17. As you're aware, that's when we eliminated the $1.2 million transfer from the utility fund to the general fund and began those operational efficiencies. This is when the base rates were created and the utility base rates for water and wastewater, and eliminated that transfer. Fiscal year 18, we really started to hone in and look at operating efficiently. We had the hiring chill, not a freeze, but a chill. When positions came available, open, we really took a hard line look at it. Do we really need that or not? Can we absorb that? Can we reallocate those resources within departments? We'll mention the one significant expenditure during that fiscal year was the compensation class study that was fully implemented, and that was about $650,000 that the city council committed to employees, which is very much appreciated. And the majority of that went to public safety, so police and fire, and within police and fire, a majority of that went to fire. And so that was a very well-received effort. Fiscal year
Is
9.
that, are we, do we have an improvement on staff retention and so forth?
I would say we had a unique situation at the end of last year.
Okay.
We had 4 vacancies at once, but one of those was mine.
Okay,
So
sure.
last year was a bit of an anomaly, but I would say yes.
Good.
And I got a survey recently. It was 41 cities in North Texas, and I would tell you that we're above the midpoint
Great.
among those 41 cities.
That's great. Appreciate the feedback.
So moving to the current fiscal year 19, again, we're kind of adapting processes to our leaner staffing model. That was helped us absorb the health insurance costs from last year. That was much appreciated by the staff, as well as instituting the HRA, the deductible reimbursement program, which has also been a benefit that I know has been utilized and much appreciated. I've actually personally utilized that benefit for my sons, and so it was appreciated for sure. And then in fiscal year 2020, so our next fiscal year, we have a line here that says better align capital expenditures with capital funds. I'll kind of get into that in the next slide with the general fund. But really looking at honing in on, are there expenditures that are in the operating fund, the general fund, that we could allocate to capital to free up that money to help with insurance cost increases or to allocate to other areas within the city. And so we've really taken a look at that this year. So getting into the numbers, what you have here is the projected fiscal year 20 numbers highlighted in blue. So that's kind of where we'll spend our time on this slide. We have projected out future years that you can see there, but we're really kind of focusing on that blue column. What this number includes is what you see on the right-hand side. So an effective tax rate. So we're looking at an effective tax rate again this year. So that was a goal that the City Council has talked about and the staff has worked hard towards, and we believe that we can propose that for this next fiscal year. So that'd be 2 years in a row of an effective tax rate. So
That's
it's a
great.
pretty big deal.
Milestone.
That'll help us.
These numbers include
That's right.
health insurance increases.
Probably won't be able to do that forever.
No, no.
We know.
We've had debate about how long that could.
Oh, yeah, we'll talk more
Of course.
Thursday.
We'll talk more on Thursday about that.
Yes, very well.
So the numbers in the blue column also include the health insurance increase absorption.
Right.
So we just had the representative talk about the increase, so that's included in these numbers. Continuing the HRA program and potentially enhancing that a little bit, that deductible reimbursement program, that's included. Funding for the merit pool increases of 3.5%. Total pool, that's included, as well as a market adjustment. You mentioned compression earlier. The market adjustment of 2% is included in these numbers.
So
That
what that
affects 18
means,
employees.
we're raising the ranges each year, and then if somebody's outside of the range, they get bumped into the range using that.
That's exactly right. And so this year, we're looking at that affecting 18 employees. That's included in these numbers as well. So, that's a lot to include with an effective tax rate,
It
and,
is.
Well,
so we think we're in a
and the-
position to do that.
And you've got the franchise fees going
Yes,
down.
we accounted for all that. So,
300,000, yeah.
absolutely. So, one of the ways we are able to do this is, I mentioned, aligning capital costs. So, what we did was, in the general fund and public works, the city was paying for 2 pretty big ticket items out of operating, a concrete contract as well as pavement markings. And most cities have those out of capital. And so we moved those out of operating into capital, so that freed up $500,000. We also are looking at some additional operational efficiencies. The fleet manager is retiring.
Which is included in the 5-year CIP.
It's included in the 5-year
Right.
capital plan, absolutely. Which is fully funded with cash.
Yes,
Yeah, I saw that big drop in
Well-
fleet.
Yes. So,
No, the question was, why wasn't some of this there to begin with? And part of that is a philosophical change as you kind of get from a position where you had a lot of things all over the place to organizing it more. This is kind of that continuing evolution.
Putting files in the right folders.
Exactly.
Exactly.
that's
Yeah,
a great description.
yeah, when we didn't know what was where, it was kind of crazy.
And that's credit to you, to the staff.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you.
is.
Absolutely. It was critical that we got that done.
We talked about operational efficiencies. One additional way we're doing that, or proposing to that next fiscal year, the fleet manager is retiring this month. We're actually recommending that we not fill that position, that position reports up to our field operations supervisor, Daryl, who's just a tremendous asset to the city. And the operational guys would still be in those positions, but we just eliminate that layer of management. And Daryl is on board with that, and Ray in Public Works, so I think that's another opportunity as well. What you see here is you see ad valorem taxes. You see the increase there. That's not a tax increase. That's counting for new growth.
What'd you say? Say it again.
No tax increase, effective
New
tax
growth.
rate. New growth.
New
Just
growth.
making sure people hear that.
So what we've factored in there is new growth from fiscal year 19 and a projection for fiscal year 20. And so that's why you see the increase there. For sales tax, and so I'm going to kind of walk through some of these line items now in detail. Sales tax, we're projecting a 1% increase over the fiscal year 19 budget, which is 2% over the fiscal year 18 year end. So later tonight in the regular council meeting, I'm going to give the monthly financial report, and you saw the email that I sent out. So sales tax went up for June. So we're at about a 0.3 increase for the year. So we think 1% is pretty conservative, but it's a pretty good number, especially as 26 wraps up and things. These out years, 21, 22, and beyond, those are 2% increases, but for next year, we feel comfortable with the 1% right now. If over the next few months we just see crazy increases, we may look at tightening that up, increasing it, but right now we feel comfortable with the 1%. Councilmember Dodson, you mentioned the franchise fees. We have reduced those to account for that legislation that was passed.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have
Oh,
gone
no,
there.
it's okay. So basically what that means is the city can't collect on certain franchise fees. We can't charge for the use of our right-of-ways. So telecom, cable, video. So we reduced those revenues by $300,000. Now, we're able to help offset that. So Encore and the other electric, Tri-County Electric, and Atmos, those are actually trending right now well above budget.
No kidding.
So we actually increased that to help offset that a little bit. So net, it's about $160,000 loss to the city is what we're forecasting right now. You see licenses and permits, reduction in revenue as well. You know, we want to be realistic about the revenues that are coming in. And
You're
this,
showing 300 here on the franchise.
oh, so that's from, so 1,900 from, about 300 from budget last year. So this
Oh, okay.
this includes Encore, Atmos, all being above budget right now for
Oh,
the year
okay.
That's
projection.
projected.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just, fine.
Can I go back to the sales tax for a minute? So the increase you said was, we're assuming 1%?
Yes, from the fiscal year 19 budget, which was
This is projected,
This
this
is
is not the
projected, we
budget.
don't have the
That's
budget
project-
line.
They didn't have the budget up.
But we're coming in above our budget this year, right?
just barely, 0.3%.
So it's close.
Yeah.
70-something, or, yes.
That's probably why you should put budget on there as well as
Yeah.
year-end projection for the current fiscal year to show comparables. Trying to be
The
conservative.
reason I just computed a percentage, I'm getting like 1.9, unless I did it
It's
wrong.
$70-something thousand.
Okay.
Anyway, never
Yeah.
mind. I'll
Yeah.
work on it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Okay. License and permits, so we reduced the projection of revenue from the year-end projection as well as $65,000 decrease from the fiscal year 19 budget revenue projection. So a lot of large-scale residential, kind of traditional subdivisions are starting to build
Slowing
out.
down.
You know, you have Oak Alley that's coming along and some others that are a little bit smaller in scale. But we think what this kind of indicates is more of a kind of a redevelopment type phase for the city.
Sure.
So we've reduced those permit fees and things like that to kind of reflect that kind of next generation for the city.
We're hoping we're wrong.
Yeah.
Of course.
And we'll talk about, you know, later the structure of that, but we're also looking at potentially increasing commercial to help, you know, offset some of that as well.
Sure.
You know, especially as the Northern Gateway and Precinct Line and all these
Right.
projects come online, you know, that'll
Yep.
help out as well. Miscellaneous income, this is one that we continue to talk about. So that $348,000 is an increase from the 19 budget of $122,000. It's down from the year-end projection, $50,000, but that's one that we may, as we tighten up the revenues, we may look at increasing that. A big contributor to that is interest income. So we've really taken a look at investments lately and, you know, obviously maintaining safety as number one priority, but looking at rate and liquidity as well. And so, you know, Jerry and I worked with Wells Fargo, our current banking and the sweep account, and we've had discussions about that, but we're getting a greater rate on that now. And so we continue to look at ways to increase that.
What did you say the budget was for 19?
It was 122 less,
226.
226, yeah.
So substantial change.
Substantial change.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely, yeah. So that 348 number is one that we've talked about potentially being able to kind of tighten up and maybe look at
Sure.
increasing as well. But again, we want, initially, we want to be conservative in those numbers. So all total, you can see the revenues, the expenditures, and so we are keeping that $1.5 million contribution to capital projects. So you take all the revenues and expenditures, we're looking at a net revenue of about $454,000. And again, that already includes all the insurance and all the merit and all that.
That's great.
And we still maintain a very healthy fund balance, 154 days. Financial policy is 90.
That's really good.
You know, kind of our acting practice is 100.
Sure.
So we're well over that.
That's great.
So with that $454,000, some things that we're talking about internally and that, we'll talk about with the city council is potentially looking at additional firefighter for the fire department. Potentially looking at taking the city secretary's position full-time instead of part-time to help out with this office. And some additional, requests that have been made by employees. Employees, and you'll see on this slide, by and large, increases to their budgets. They were able to kind of absorb a lot of those increases. Our message to employees was, if you don't ask, we don't know, and we can't consider it. So, please ask us for things. A lot of things were identified during the budget process with department heads that we were able to actually do this current fiscal year with some savings and things like that. A lot of things with the Colleyville Center and some things with IT and facilities. And so, but we asked them, don't shy away from asking us. We can't consider it. We can't, if we don't know what the need is.
Mark, a nice compliment is the increase in fire in the overtime area.
Yes.
Because you're finally acknowledging and funding appropriately in the budget what has been a realistic, actual number year after year.
Right. Yeah. And so we increased that overtime budget $75,000 for the.
Which was underfunded in the budget and overspent every year because it was a need.
And because you had the money, right?
Well, it was a need that nobody wanted to acknowledge, so by not putting it in the budget, you don't acknowledge it. And Mark said,
Exactly.
no. The trend shows we're spending it,
Let's
and
put
the
it in
chief
there.
spent a lot of time explaining the justification, and so Mark adjusted the budget accordingly.
Great.
And the chief is working on a lot of strategies to help decrease that. We're not going to spend it just because it's there.
Sure.
So he's working on a lot of things efficiency-wise for the fire department to help, not spend that additional, but we want to be realistic.
Yeah.
It's been well over for the last 3 or 4 years. Why not acknowledge that and try to,
Absolutely.
work towards
You
bringing
need
that
to,
down.
if you don't know it, you can't manage it.
Right.
That's right.
No, we have the best
How
in the
many years
systems.
was our contract with legal?
Would say that again?
Our legal?
Yeah.
Do we have a multi-year
Right.
contract with them? How long is it?
Good question.
I know it clearly goes through next year.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
We're good.
That's a good question. I don't know.
He's not here.
I think he's not here.
I believe that it is.
Next year on, wow.
We'll cut it down.
He'll be renegotiating, I think.
Yeah. I think it's a
I'm
fun
sure we
fee for
could
these
find
meetings,
one.
right?
It is right now.
We can find a cheaper one someplace.
He said he researched it before we have, Mayor Newton joined us, so. He is good. But he looked at the time of the meeting, it was
Oh, I
before you
know,
had joined, yeah.
Don't tell him.
Yeah. Maybe he's watching on Facebook Live.
He's watching.
He's watching.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
saying.
he's on film.
He's watching.
So we'll move on to the utility
Oh,
fund.
go back.
Oh, go back.
The 485,000 less on street maintenance.
Right.
There's a transfer
So
to
that's
capital.
that's the capital
Makes
that I
sense.
mentioned.
Oh,
So
okay. I'm sorry.
moving the 2 items to capital.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't
Let's
realize.
see that.
No, but that's a fair question. So
Yeah.
a lot of your big ticket funding in fire and some of the other areas, and police and fire especially,
Sure.
being funded with that transfer.
That's great.
Good.
And 98 Fleet Services, is that?
The savings of not
That's the
replacing
position.
person,
That's the
One
savings of
person.
the
Okay, the
position.
first.
salary cut,
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
individual cut,
Yeah.
not
Retirement.
salary. Yeah.
No, that's great. I appreciate, this breakdown really helps.
Absolutely.
When you have it all bunched together or when you look at the string out,
Is that a
it's
5-minute
almost
call?
impossible to figure out what's going. Okay, go ahead.
Just moving along quickly, so utility fund, what you see in blue is the city expenses, what is in yellow is TRA, so just pass through. What in blue is required for us to recover our costs to put on the utility. So we think that there may be an opportunity to do what we did last year, which was lower the total rate, but take that incremental difference and add it to the CIP.
Great.
We think so. So we're still looking at customer numbers and applying it to the model. We'll hone in on that as we get through the summer.
Well, that's very good. That's
Smart.
success if you're able to do that.
Absolutely.
You're getting more efficient.
If we keep having these floods, we're not gonna need to send as much money to TRA, that's for sure. That's
The
great.
lower Arvin.
We'll look at that at the monthly financial report too later. We'll show the usage, the water usage.
I know. I've seen that.
Yeah.
Already.
Yeah.
Yep.
The remaining funds are small. This is a drainage fund, it's very small. It's mainly personnel within drainage, but it's a small fund. It's the $7 fee per month. Nothing major out of there. And then we have the debt service fund. Got a little bullet on the right. General obligation debt we paid off in fiscal year 2028.
Yep.
So next year the fund is at 1.2 million
And dropping.
and dropping.
Drops dramatically
Yep.
in 21. Yeah, that's great.
So lastly,
Translate to a rate drop.
yeah.
That'll translate directly to a rate
Right.
drop.
Well-
So there's no,
A little bit. A lot of that drop is from the refunding from the CCCPD.
And just a reminder, this is how we are paying for ambulance, fire engine.
Yeah,
those lease
lease,
payments.
sure.
So we've got those payments in there as well.
One thing that doesn't show up here, of course, and we don't need to talk to it now if we don't have time. I was just wondering where things stand on the fiber. I know that's capital.
Stand
Yeah.
in.
So it's
We'll
moving
be talking
forward.
about that other, but,
Yeah, so it's still moving forward, and that's funded out of the TIF,
yeah, I know.
the fiber project.
So we'll talk about it in TIF,
Yeah.
okay.
we
Yeah,
can
'cause
just
I'd like
status on
to-
that project.
I'd like to see where we are, where Colleyville is. I mean, I
Right.
know they're making actions, but.
Yeah, we can get an update, Chris.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And then lastly, we have the agency agreements, so this is what's been approved in the past. On the right-hand side is what's been requested. It's a little bit of an anomaly. Catholic Charities has not ever received funding. They did come in and ask for $100,000 this year. If you take that out, it's at 32.5. Not saying we'll take all that, it's up for discussion, but I'm just saying.
Well, we don't, yeah, I mean, we don't really have from my perspective, kind of a legitimate proposal from them.
Right.
What
No.
they proposed wasn't reasonable to me.
It was really huge.
Not,
Yeah.
Well, they assumed they were gonna use their ambulance or
their
the lift.
vans, yeah, their vans.
Their lift van for everything.
Yeah.
I spoke with them and just shared, because he was doing their budget, and I shared with him that it was unlikely we would fund that large an expenditure. We thought they did a great job and great programs, but we just
Sure.
couldn't see funding to that extent when the other groups that are requesting funding are nowhere near that.
So I'll just point out, the Colleyville Chamber, last year, you see the two blanks, we used to handle that separately with a separate agreement with the chamber now, so that's why it's not on there anymore. Grace is asking for 5,000 more, Meals on Wheels, 2,000 more, and the rest are the same request. So if you back out the Catholic Charities, it's at 32.5.
And these are all the requests we have, right?
Correct. Yeah. So that 32.5, or whatever level, if,
Yeah.
whatever the city count. So that would be one other item that would come out of that 454 from the general
Yeah.
fund that I mentioned. So it's kind of flexibility you have.
Yep.
That's it.
Very good.
Great.
perfect.
Any questions?
No,
Thank you, very good.
great news. It really is.
Yeah.
Does hard work. Thank you.
Okay, well, the last item is discussion of agenda items. The only thing I have is item 6B. We should have had a request for tabling that, did we?
Yes.
Okay, so item 6B, the Glade Road zoning.
You wanted
Yeah,
R40
we-
versus
we met-
RE, yeah.
Yeah, so we met with me and Jerry
the
and
building
Greg
engineer.
and the engineer and talked about it, and they were simply interested in moving it along, so Jerry told them they could go ahead and start the kind of preliminary review, and they needed to handle that 17-foot
Sure.
strip, because if they have that, it's not a problem to
Right.
the
Yeah.
RE, so he thought they had an attorney working on it, he expected that to be handled in a month, so they said, fine, we'll ask for.
And that
just
strip,
table it and
the
it'll
strip
get
is their driveway, right?
Yeah, it's the current driveway already.
Yeah, right, yeah, so I think that'll work out.
Like,
And what we
that's
did
not-
is,
Yeah.
we advertised for P and Z to review plat consolidation with the hopes that they can do that on July 8th.
Yeah.
And then at our meeting on July 16th, we can bring the second reading of the zoning ordinance to RE
Yeah.
at the same time as the plat consolidation out of P and Z and settle at that time. If, however, they're not completed with the acquisition of the property, we can always table it at that time.
Yeah, right. So we talked
That's
about all
good.
that. Cool.
And thanks, Ben, for your team for that work.
Yeah.
Very good. So I want to close the work session if there's no other questions. Work session is closed at 6:30.
It just
We'll-
doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we'll now be moving into executive session in accordance with the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D, Section 551.071 Legal, Section 551.072 Real Estate, and Section 551.087 Economic Development. We're now in executive session.
It's all owned by the same person, so what we're saying is, there was already a